Choose him or choose us, Cassie. You can't have both. My mother's words hit like ice water as I stood in their pristine living room, still in my work clothes, holding the engagement ring I'd been so excited to show them just 5 minutes earlier. My father nodded grimly from his leather recliner, arms crossed, while my mother's perfectly manicured finger pointed at the door like I was some stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. That's the moment I realized I'd spent 25 years seeking approval from people who saw love as a competition they had to win. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights in Romano Event Planning buzzed overhead as Cassie Romano finished organizing the final details for Saturday's wedding reception. It was nearly 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening, and the office was empty except for her, but she didn't mind staying late. Planning other people's perfect days had become more than just a job. It was her passion, her escape, and lately, her training ground for something much more personal. She pulled out her phone and smiled at the text from Kai. "Dinner at Rossetti's? I have something important to ask you." Her heart had been racing all day since receiving that message. They'd been together for 2 years, and lately there had been hints, little moments that made her wonder if tonight might be the night that changed everything. Cassie locked up the office and drove through Austin's evening traffic, her mind wandering to all the couples she'd helped plan their special days. She knew every detail that went into making a wedding perfect. The flowers, the venue, the music, the food. But as she pulled into the restaurant parking lot, she realized she'd never really imagined her own wedding day. Not because she didn't want it, but because she'd always been too focused on making everyone else happy to think about what would make her truly happy. Kai was already waiting at their usual table by the window, looking nervous and handsome in his navy button-down shirt. Dr. Kai Nakamura worked at the Austin Animal Hospital, and Cassie loved watching him with the animals. So gentle, so patient, so completely different from the aggressive, demanding personality her father had always insisted she needed in a man. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to kiss her cheek as she sat down. His hands were shaking slightly, and Cassie felt her stomach flutter with anticipation. They made small talk through dinner, but Cassie could sense Kai's nervousness growing with each passing minute. Finally, as their dessert plates were cleared away, he reached across the table and took her hands in his. "Cassie, these past 2 years have been the happiest of my life. You make me laugh every day, you challenge me to be better, you see the world in this beautiful, optimistic way that makes everything brighter." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "I can't imagine my life without you in it." Before she could respond, Kai was sliding out of his chair and dropping to one knee beside their table. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath as he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a stunning oval diamond ring surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like stars. "Cassie Marie Romano, will you marry me?" Tears immediately filled her eyes as she looked down at this incredible man who loved her so completely, so unconditionally. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes!" The restaurant erupted in applause as Kai slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. It fit perfectly, and Cassie couldn't stop staring at it as he stood and kissed her, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you so much," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too, future Mrs. Nakamura," he replied, making her heart soar even higher. They stayed at the restaurant for another hour, calling Kai's parents, who screamed with joy over FaceTime from their home in California, and making preliminary plans for their future. Kai had been saving for the ring for 8 months, he confessed, and had gotten her ring size from her best friend Leah weeks ago. "Should we go tell your parents?" Kai asked, as they finally left the restaurant, Cassie's hand firmly clasped in his, the ring catching streetlights as they walked. Cassie hesitated for just a moment. Her parents, Vivian and Greg Romano, had always been complicated. They ran a successful construction business and had very specific ideas about what Cassie's life should look like. They'd never been outright rude to Kai, but they'd made their feelings clear through subtle comments and pointed questions about his career prospects and background. "Of course," she said, pushing down the small knot of anxiety in her stomach. They'll be so happy for us. The drive to her parents' house in Westlake Hills took 20 minutes, giving Cassie time to admire her ring and imagine their wedding. Maybe a spring ceremony in Zilker Park with string lights and wildflowers, or something more elegant at the Four Seasons. The possibilities seemed endless and magical.
Her parents' house was a massive 2-story colonial that Greg had built himself, all clean lines and expensive fixtures designed to impress. The circular driveway could fit 6 cars, and the perfectly manicured lawn was bordered by Vivian's prize-winning rose garden. Everything about the Romano family home screamed success and control. Cassie used her key to let them in, calling out as they entered the marble foyer. "Mom? Dad? I have amazing news." Vivian appeared from the kitchen, still in her business suit from her day managing the construction company's books. She was a small woman, but commanded attention with her steel gray hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and her critical eyes that missed nothing. "Cassie, dear, what are you doing here so late?" She noticed Kai behind her, and her smile became noticeably cooler. "Hello, Kai." "Hi, Mrs. Romano," Kai replied politely, squeezing Cassie's hand for support. Greg emerged from his study, still in his work clothes, concrete dust on his boots despite Vivian's house rules. He was a large man with graying hair and calloused hands that had built an empire from nothing, and he'd never let anyone forget it. "What's all the excitement about?" he asked, settling into his leather recliner with the weariness of someone who'd been working since dawn. Cassie took a deep breath, her left hand hidden behind her back. "Kai proposed," she announced, bringing her hand forward to show off the beautiful ring. "We're engaged!" The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian's face went completely blank, while Greg's expression darkened like a storm cloud. Cassie felt Kai tense beside her, but she kept smiling, waiting for the congratulations that surely had to come. "You're what?" Vivian's voice was barely above a whisper. "Engaged," Cassie repeated, her excitement starting to waver. "Kai asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Isn't it wonderful?" Greg stood up slowly from his chair, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the room. "Cassie Marie, we need to talk. Alone." "Dad, whatever you want to say, you can say in front of Kai. He's going to be your son-in-law." "Like hell he is," Greg muttered, and Cassie felt her stomach drop. Vivian stepped forward, her composure returning as she slipped into the cold, controlled tone she used for business negotiations. "Cassie, honey, you're being impulsive. You're only 25. You have your whole life ahead of you. This is a mistake." "A mistake?" Cassie's voice rose in disbelief. "How is marrying someone I love a mistake?" "Because he's not right for you," Greg said bluntly. "We've been trying to be polite, but this has gone too far. You need to end this now before you ruin your life." Kai stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. and Mrs. Romano, I love your daughter very much. I know we can work through any concerns you might have." "This isn't a negotiation, son," Greg replied, the word son dripping with condescension. "This is us protecting our daughter from a mistake she'll regret for the rest of her life." Cassie felt tears starting to burn her eyes, but they weren't tears of joy anymore. "What are you talking about? Kai is amazing. He's kind, he's successful, he treats me like a queen." "He's not one of us," Vivian interrupted sharply. "He doesn't understand our family, our values, our way of life. You think love is enough. It's not. Marriage is about compatibility, about building a life with someone who shares your background and goals." "Our background?" Cassie stared at her mother in disbelief. "What does that even mean?" The room fell silent again, the unspoken prejudices hanging in the air like toxic fumes. Cassie realized with growing horror what her parents were really saying, what they'd probably been thinking all along but had been too polite to voice directly. "I see," she said quietly, her voice barely steady. "This is about his race." "This is about what's best for you," Greg said bluntly, "and what's best for this family. We've worked too hard to build what we have to watch you throw it away on some fantasy." Kai's hand found hers, and she could feel the tension radiating from his body, though his voice remained respectfully calm. "I think maybe we should go, Cassie." But Vivian wasn't finished. She moved to block their path to the door, her expression cold and determined. "Cassie, You have a choice to make right now. You can end this ridiculous engagement and come to your senses, or you can walk out that door and lose your family forever." The words hit Cassie like a physical blow. "Mom, you can't be serious." "Dead serious," Greg confirmed, crossing his arms. "Choose him or choose us, Cassie. You can't have both."
Cassie stared at her parents in stunned silence, the engagement ring suddenly feeling heavy on her finger. The beautiful moment she'd imagined sharing with her family was crumbling around her like a house built on sand. Kai's hand in hers was the only thing keeping her grounded as the full weight of their ultimatum settled over the room. "You're asking me to choose between the man I love and my family?" she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Vivian's expression didn't soften. "What sounds insane is throwing away everything we've built for you because you think you're in love with someone who will never truly understand who you are." "Who I am?" Cassie's voice rose. "And who exactly am I, according to you?" Greg stepped forward, his construction-calloused hands gesturing around the opulent living room. "You're a Romano, Cassie. This family started with nothing. My grandfather came here from Italy with $50 and a dream. We built this business, this house, this life with our bare hands. We have traditions, expectations, a legacy to protect. And somehow Kai threatens that legacy?" "He's not part of our world," Vivian said matter-of-factly. "Different culture, different values, different everything. You think his family will accept you any more than ours accepts him?" Cassie felt Kai's hand tighten around hers. She knew his parents had welcomed her with open arms from day one, treating her like the daughter they'd never had. The contrast between the two families had never been starker than it was right now. "His parents love me," she said firmly. "They've never made me feel like I had to choose between loving their son and being myself." "That's because they don't understand what's at stake," Greg shot back. "Wait until you're married and the real differences start showing. Wait until you have children and you can't agree on how to raise them. Wait until—" "Stop," Kai interrupted quietly, his voice cutting through Greg's tirade. "With all due respect, Mr. Romano, you're talking about your daughter like she's incapable of making her own decisions. Cassie is one of the smartest, most capable people I know. She doesn't need anyone to tell her what's best for her life." The room fell silent again, and Cassie felt a surge of love and gratitude for this man who stood up for her, even in the face of her family's hostility. "See?" Vivian said, pointing at Kai, as if he'd just proven her point. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. He doesn't understand respect, doesn't understand family hierarchy. In our family, we listen to our elders. In our family, we also love and support each other unconditionally. Or at least, I thought we did." She looked around the living room where she'd grown up, really seeing it for the first time. The expensive furniture that was more for show than comfort. The family photos arranged strategically on the mantel, always perfectly posed, never candid moments of genuine happiness. The awards and certificates covering one wall, documenting every achievement that had made her parents proud. But there were no photos of her and Kai together. No evidence that the past 2 years of her life, the happiest 2 years, had ever happened. Her parents had systematically erased him from their narrative of her life. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked suddenly. "This ultimatum. You didn't just come up with it tonight." Vivian and Greg exchanged a glance that confirmed her suspicions. "We hoped you'd come to your senses on your own. We've been patient, thinking this was just a phase. But when Leah mentioned he might propose soon—" "Leah told you?" Cassie felt another piece of her world shift. Her best friend since college, the one person she trusted with everything. "She's concerned about you too," Greg said. "She sees what we see, that you're changing, becoming someone we don't recognize." Cassie thought about that accusation. It was true in a way. She had been changing since she met Kai. She laughed more easily, she stood up for herself more often, she'd started pursuing her own dreams instead of just following the path her parents had laid out for her. She'd become happier, more confident,
more herself than she had ever been. "If I'm changing, it's for the better," she said firmly. "Kai brings out the best in me." "He's made you selfish," Vivian countered. "You used to care about family, about what people thought, about maintaining standards. Now you're willing to embarrass us all for some romantic fantasy." Embarrass you how, exactly? Cassie's anger was building now, burning away the shock and hurt. By loving someone who treats me well? By being happy? "By marrying outside your race," Greg said bluntly, finally voicing what had been dancing around the edges of their conversation. "There, I said it. Is that what you wanted to hear?" The honesty was somehow worse than the coded language. At least now she knew exactly where she stood. "Dad, I can't believe you just said that." "It's the truth, and you know it. People will talk. Business associates, neighbors, our friends at the country club. They'll judge us, judge you, judge any children you might have. Is that the life you want?"
Cassie looked at her father, this man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had walked her to school on her first day, who had always been her hero despite his flaws. Now she was seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "Yes," she said simply. "If it means being with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I represent, then yes, that's exactly the life I want." Kai squeezed her hand, and she could see the pride in his eyes despite the pain this conversation was causing him. "Then you've made your choice," Vivian said coldly. "Don't expect us to support this marriage. Don't expect us to attend your wedding. Don't expect us to welcome him into this family. And don't expect us to bail you out when it all falls apart," Greg added. "No coming back here when reality hits and you realize we were right all along." Cassie felt tears threatening, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break down. "Fine," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "if that's how you want it." She turned toward the door, but Vivian's voice stopped her. "Cassie, wait. You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about what you're giving up. Think about your future, your security, your family. All we're asking is that you be smart about this." For a moment, Cassie hesitated. These were her parents, the people who had raised her, sacrificed for her, loved her in their own complicated way. The thought of losing them forever was almost unbearable. But then she felt Kai's presence beside her, steady and unwavering, and she remembered how it felt to be truly loved, without conditions or compromises. "I've thought about it," she said, not turning around, "and I've made my choice." They walked out into the humid Austin night, and Cassie didn't look back at the house where she'd grown up. As they reached Kai's car, she finally let the tears fall. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against his chest as he held her in the driveway. "I'm so sorry they said those things to you." "Hey," he said softly, tilting her chin up to look at him. "None of that was your fault. You stood up for us, for what we have. I'm proud of you." "I just lost my family," she said, the reality of it hitting her fully for the first time. "No," Kai said firmly, wiping away her tears. "You just found out who your real family is. And we're going to build something beautiful together with people who actually love and support us." As they drove away from her childhood home, Cassie looked down at her engagement ring, still sparkling in the streetlights. The joy of the evening had been tainted, but not destroyed. She was going to marry the love of her life, with or without her parents' blessing. The real question now was, what came next? The next morning, Cassie woke up in Kai's apartment with swollen eyes and a heart that felt like it had been put through a blender. For a blissful moment, she forgot about the previous night's disaster and simply admired her engagement ring in the morning sunlight streaming through his bedroom window. Then reality crashed back over her like a cold wave. Kai appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a concerned expression. "How are you feeling, beautiful?" "Like my entire world just shifted," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I keep thinking maybe it was all a bad dream." "Unfortunately not," he said gently, sitting beside her on the bed. "But hey, at least we're engaged to the love of our lives, right?" Despite everything, Cassie found herself smiling. "Right. And your parents were so happy for us." They want a video call tonight to celebrate properly. Mom's already planning to fly out here to help with wedding planning. The contrast between their families couldn't be starker. Kai's parents, both professors at UC Berkeley, had welcomed Cassie from their first meeting. His mother, Dr. Yuki Nakamura, had immediately started treating her like a daughter, sharing family recipes and stories. His father, Dr. James Nakamura, had shown her his extensive book collection and spent hours discussing literature with her. They'd never once questioned her background, her worthiness, or her love for their son. "I wish my parents were more like yours," Cassie said wistfully. "Your parents love you," Kai said carefully. "They're just misguided right now." Cassie thought about that as she got ready for work. Did they really love her, or did they love the version of her that fit their expectations? As she drove to the office, memories started surfacing, patterns she'd been blind to for years. When she was 16 and wanted to take art classes, her parents had steered her toward business courses instead. "Art is a hobby, not a career," her mother had said. When she'd gotten into the University of Texas with a partial scholarship, they insisted she study marketing rather than the event planning program she actually wanted. "Marketing is more prestigious," her father had explained. Even her job at Romano Event Planning, they'd arranged that position through a family friend, not because Cassie had earned it on her own merits. She'd been so grateful at the time, but now she wondered if they'd been controlling her career path all along. The office was buzzing with activity when she arrived, her coworker Natasha immediately noticing something was off. "You look terrible," Natasha said bluntly, setting down her coffee. "What happened? Did the proposal not go well?" Cassie held up her left hand, showing off the ring. "The proposal was perfect. Meeting my parents afterward, not so much." She found herself telling Natasha the whole story, from the magical dinner to the devastating ultimatum. Natasha listened with growing outrage, her dark eyes flashing with anger on Cassie's behalf. "What?" Partly said, "I'm sorry, but your parents are straight up racist." "I don't think they see it that way. They think they're protecting me." "From what? Happiness? Love? A good man who treats you right?" Natasha shook her head. "Cassie, I've seen you with Kai. I've never seen you so happy, so confident, so yourself. And your parents want to take that away because of what? The color of his skin? His last name?" Hearing it stated so plainly was like a slap in the face. Cassie had been making excuses for her parents' behavior for so long that she'd almost convinced herself it wasn't that simple. But it was. It really was that simple and that ugly. "You know what the worst part is?" Cassie said, sinking into her desk chair. "This isn't the first time they've tried to control my life. I'm just now seeing the pattern." She told Natasha about her college major, her career path, even her previous boyfriends. Her parents had found something wrong with every single guy she dated before Kai. Too poor, too immature, wrong family background, wrong ambitions. She thought they were just being protective, but now she realized they'd been systematically sabotaging any relationship that didn't fit their narrow vision of acceptable. "The only difference with Kai is that I didn't listen to them. I kept dating him despite their disapproval. And look how happy I became." "Exactly," Natasha said firmly. "You finally chose yourself over their expectations, and they can't handle it." Cassie's phone buzzed with a text from her brother Ethan. "Heard about the engagement drama. Mom's been calling everyone in the family. You might want to brace yourself." Her stomach dropped. Of course her mother would rally the troops, paint herself as the victim in this story. By now, every aunt, uncle, and cousin probably had Vivian's version of events, that Cassie was being selfish and ungrateful, throwing away everything for some inappropriate relationship. Sure enough, her phone started ringing almost immediately. Aunt Linda from Dallas, Uncle Mike from Houston, her cousin Jenny from San Antonio. But then her phone rang with a call she couldn't ignore. Leah, her best friend since college, the same Leah who had apparently warned her parents about the possible proposal. "Cassie, thank God," Leah said when she answered. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" Cassie repeated incredulously.
Leah, you told my parents Kai might propose. You gave them advance warning so they could ambush us. I was worried about you, Leah said defensively. Your parents asked me if I thought he was serious about you, and I didn't want to lie. I thought they deserved to know what was coming. What was coming? You mean my happiness? My engagement to a wonderful man? Cassie, you have to understand their perspective. They're just looking out for you. By giving me an ultimatum? By being racist? By trying to control who I love? There was a pause. I don't think it's about race, Leah said carefully. I think it's about compatibility, cultural differences. You know how your parents are about tradition and family values. Cassie felt her heart sink even further. Her best friend, someone she'd trusted with everything, was making excuses for her parents' bigotry. Leah, what if someone told you that you couldn't marry Jake because he was the wrong race? How would you feel? That's different. Jake and I are... How is it different? Cassie interrupted. Because you're both white? Because your parents approve? What makes your love more valid than mine? Another pause, longer this time. I just think you should consider what you're giving up. Your family, your inheritance, your place in the community. Is any relationship worth all that? A real relationship is, Cassie said firmly. A relationship built on genuine love and respect and partnership, not whatever you and Jake have. She regretted the words as soon as they left her mouth, but she was too hurt and angry to take them back. I'm trying to be a good friend here, Leah said coldly. No, you're trying to be a good friend to my parents. There's a difference. After hanging up on Leah, Cassie sat at her desk feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her life. In the space of 12 hours, she'd lost her parents, her extended family, and her best friend. The only people firmly in her corner were Kai, his family, and apparently Natasha. You know what this means, right? Natasha said, having overheard the conversation with Leah. You get to find out who your real friends are, and you get to build a chosen family of people who actually love and support you. Cassie looked down at her engagement ring again, remembering the joy on Kai's face when she said yes, the pride in his voice when he called her his future wife. Then she thought about his parents' excitement, their immediate acceptance and love. You're right, she said slowly. Maybe losing all these people isn't a loss at all. Maybe it's making room for something better. But even as she said it, she couldn't quite believe it yet. The grief was too fresh, the betrayal too raw. She was going to need time to process the fact that everyone she thought would celebrate her happiness had instead chosen to attack it. For now, though, she had work to do. Ironically, she was planning 3 different weddings this month, all celebrations of love that their families wholeheartedly supported. As she pulled up the first client file, she wondered what it would be like to plan her own wedding under such different circumstances. Would she even have a wedding at all, or would she and Kai end up eloping to avoid the drama? The thought made her sad, but it also sparked something else: determination. Her parents thought they could control her choices by threatening to withdraw their support. But maybe it was time to show them exactly how strong she was without them.
3 days had passed since the ultimatum, and Cassie's parents weren't backing down. If anything, they were doubling down on their campaign to break up her engagement. It started with the voicemails, long, guilt-laden messages from her mother about family loyalty and disappointing the people who had sacrificed everything for her. Then came the text messages from various relatives, each one carefully crafted to make her question her decision. Cassie was reviewing seating charts for the Henderson wedding when her phone rang. Her father's name appeared on the screen, and against her better judgment, she answered. Cassie, we need to talk. Greg's voice was gruff, tired. This has gone on long enough. Dad, if you're calling to apologize... I'm calling because your mother hasn't slept in 3 days. She's making herself sick over this situation. Cassie felt a familiar stab of guilt, the same feeling that had controlled her for most of her life. Her mother's happiness had always been her responsibility, her father's approval her constant goal. But something had shifted in those 3 days of radio silence. She'd had time to think, to process, to see clearly for the first time. That's her choice, Dad. She's the one who decided to make my engagement about her feelings instead of my happiness. Your happiness? Greg's voice rose. We don't want you to be happy. Everything we've done has been for your happiness, your security, your future. No, Dad. Everything you've done has been for your vision of what my life should look like. There's a difference. He heard him take a deep breath, clearly trying to control his temper. Cassie, I'm going to ask you one more time to reconsider this engagement. End it now before you make the biggest mistake of your life. And if I don't, then you'll force us to take more drastic measures. The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. What does that mean exactly? It means we've spoken to our lawyer. You're still listed as a beneficiary on several of our accounts and policies. That can change. The car you drive, it's in our name. The credit cards we help you with, those can be canceled. The connections that got you your job, those relationships can be damaged. Cassie felt her stomach drop. She'd known her parents had financial leverage over her, but hearing it laid out so coldly made her realize just how much control they'd maintained over her adult life. You're threatening to financially destroy me because I'm in love with someone you don't approve of? We're trying to help you see reason before you destroy yourself. Some lessons are expensive, Cassie. We'd rather you learn this one cheaply. After hanging up, Cassie sat in her office trying to process the conversation. Her parents weren't just withdrawing their support. They were actively planning to sabotage her independence. The car she drove to work every day could be repossessed. The credit cards that helped her manage monthly expenses could be canceled without warning. Even her job could be at risk if her parents decided to poison their relationship with her boss. She was still reeling when Natasha knocked on her office door. "Hey, girl, you look like you've seen a ghost." Cassie explained the conversation with her father, watching Natasha's expression grow increasingly outraged. "They can't do that," Natasha said firmly. "That's financial abuse, literal manipulation through money and threats." "They can do whatever they want. I was stupid to let myself become so dependent on them." "You weren't stupid. You were trusting family members who are supposed to have your best interests at heart. There's a difference." Natasha pulled up a chair. "Look, I've been thinking about this situation a lot. My cousin went through something similar when she married outside her race. Her family cut her off completely, financially, emotionally, the whole thing." "What happened to her?" "She struggled for a while, I won't lie, but you know what? She figured it out. She and her husband built something amazing together. They've been married 15 years now, have 3 beautiful kids, and her family eventually came around. Most of them anyway. And the ones who didn't, she realized she was better off without them," Natasha said simply. "Sometimes cutting out toxic people makes room for better relationships." Cassie's phone buzzed with another text, this one from her cousin Jenny. "Cassie, your mom is devastated. Can't you at least postpone the engagement until everyone has time to adjust? Family should come first." She showed the message to Natasha, who rolled her eyes. Family should come first? What about their family obligation to support your happiness? That's what I don't understand. When did loving someone become a betrayal of family? When did my engagement become about everyone except me and Kai? Her office phone rang again, interrupting her thoughts. "Romano Event Planning, this is Cassie." "Cassie, dear, it's Mrs. Henderson. I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but I wanted to discuss some concerns about our wedding coordination."
Mrs. Henderson was one of their biggest clients, planning an elaborate wedding for her daughter next month. Cassie had been working on the event for 6 months, handling every detail personally. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson. What can I help you with?" "Well, I've been hearing some troubling things about your personal situation. Something about family discord and questionable relationship choices. I have to say, I'm concerned about how this might affect your ability to manage Sarah's special day." Cassie's blood ran cold. Her parents had made good on their threat faster than she'd expected. "Mrs. Henderson, I can assure you that my personal life has no impact on my professional abilities. I've been working on Sarah's wedding for months, and everything is perfectly organized. I'm sure you believe that, dear. But planning a wedding requires understanding the importance of family harmony and traditional values. How can I trust you to create the perfect day for Sarah when you're causing such chaos in your own family? The conversation continued for 10 painful minutes, with Mrs. Henderson questioning every aspect of the wedding plans while making thinly veiled references to Cassie's poor judgment and family problems. By the time she hung up, Cassie was shaking with anger and humiliation. "They got to her," she told Natasha. "My parents somehow got to Mrs. Henderson and poisoned her against me." "Can they do that? Interfere with your work?" "My dad has connections everywhere in this city. He built half the buildings downtown, including the country club where Mrs. Henderson plays tennis every day. One conversation over cocktails is all it would take." As if to confirm her fears, her boss Marcus appeared in her doorway, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. "Cassie, can I see you in my office for a moment?" The walk down the hall felt like a death march. Marcus had always been supportive, treating her more like a daughter than an employee, but now his expression was troubled, conflicted. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said, closing the door behind them. "I need to talk to you about some calls I've been receiving. Let me guess. Concerns about my personal life affecting my professional judgment." Marcus sighed heavily. "3 clients have called since this morning, all expressing doubts about your ability to handle their events. Mrs. Henderson wants to switch coordinators. The Jameson anniversary party is considering canceling altogether." Cassie felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. "Marcus, you know me. You know the quality of my work. I've never let personal issues interfere with a client's event." "I know that, honey. You're one of the best coordinators I've ever worked with, but I'm also a businessman. If clients lose confidence in you, it affects the whole company. So what are you saying?" Marcus looked genuinely pained. "I'm saying maybe you should take some time off while this family situation gets resolved. Let things cool down, give people time to forget about the drama." "You're suspending me. I'm giving you a leave of absence with pay while you sort things out. Your job will be here when you're ready to come back." Cassie walked back to her office in a daze. In less than a week, her parents had managed to attack her personal relationships, threaten her financial independence, and now undermine her career. The scope of their retaliation was breathtaking and terrifying. She called Kai immediately, her voice shaking as she explained what had happened. "I'm coming to get you," he said without hesitation. "Pack up your things. You're not dealing with this alone." "Kai, what if they're right? What if I'm destroying my life for this relationship?" "Cassie, listen to me. You're not destroying anything. You're being attacked by people who claim to love you, but are trying to control you through fear and manipulation. That's not love. That's abuse." As she gathered her personal items from her office, she realized he was right. Her parents weren't protecting her from making a mistake. They were punishing her for making a choice they didn't like. There was a huge difference between the two. But knowing that intellectually and being strong enough to withstand their assault were 2 very different things. As she walked out of the office building, Cassie wondered if she had what it took to survive this war her parents had declared. The real battle was just beginning.
That evening, Cassie sat in Kai's living room, surrounded by tissues and the remnants of takeout containers, trying to process the full scope of her parents' retaliation. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop with messages from relatives, family friends, and even people she barely knew, all weighing in on her situation with varying degrees of disappointment and disapproval. "Look at this one," she said, showing Kai a text from her great-aunt Martha. "Cassie, your poor mother called me in tears. How could you be so selfish? Family is forever. Men come and go." Kai took the phone and deleted the message without reading the rest. "Stop torturing yourself with these. Block their numbers." "I can't block my entire family." "You can block people who are emotionally abusing you," he said firmly. "Blood relation doesn't give someone the right to treat you like garbage." Cassie knew he was right, but 25 years of conditioning wasn't easy to overcome. She'd been raised to believe that family loyalty was the highest virtue, that disappointing her parents was the worst possible sin. Even now, part of her wondered if she should just give up, apologize, and try to repair the relationships. Her phone rang again. This time it was Brooke Mitchell, her friend from college who lived across town. Unlike Leah, Brooke had been nothing but supportive when Cassie told her about the engagement. "Hey girl," Brooke said when Cassie answered. "I heard through the grapevine that your family is losing their minds over your engagement. How are you holding up?" "I've been better," I admitted. "They're not just disapproving, they're actively trying to sabotage my life, my job, my finances, everything." Jesus, that's not family dysfunction, that's full-scale warfare. I keep wondering if I'm being stubborn. Maybe I should just stop right there, Brooke interrupted. Don't you dare finish that sentence. I've seen you with Kai, remember, at my birthday party last month? You two were so happy, so natural together. You were glowing, Cassie, actually glowing. Cassie remembered that night. It had been one of those perfect evenings where everything felt right with the world. Kai had fit seamlessly into her friend group, making everyone laugh with his dry humor and gentle teasing. Several people had commented on how good they were together, how obvious their love was. Your parents are scared, Cassie. They're scared of losing control over you, so they're pulling out every manipulation tactic in the book. Don't let them win. After hanging up with Brooke, Cassie felt marginally better, but then her phone rang again, and this time the caller ID made her stomach clench. Ethan, her younger brother. "Cass, thank God you answered," Ethan said, his voice strained. "We need to talk." "If you're calling to lecture me about family loyalty, I'm calling because Mom collapsed at work today. She's in the hospital." Cassie's world tilted sideways. "What? What happened? Is she okay?" "She's stable now, but it was some kind of stress-related episode. High blood pressure, chest pains. The doctor said it could have been much worse. I'm coming to the hospital right now." "Cass, wait. Before you do that, you need to know Dad's been telling everyone this is your fault, that the stress of your rebellion is what caused this." Cassie felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Even now, even with her mother in the hospital, they were finding ways to manipulate her emotions and make her feel responsible for their choices. "Ethan, you don't really believe that, do you?" There was a long pause. "I don't know what to believe anymore. All I know is that our family is falling apart, and it started when you brought him home. It started when Mom and Dad decided their prejudices were more important than my happiness. This isn't about Kai, Ethan. This is about control." "Is it worth it?" Ethan asked quietly. "Is any relationship worth destroying our family?" "Our family destroyed itself. The moment they told me to choose between love and them, they made it clear what kind of people they really are." She hung up and immediately started crying, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. Kai held her while she fell apart, not saying anything, just being present while she grieved for the family she'd thought she had. "I feel like such a horrible person," she whispered against a shoulder. "My mother is in the hospital and part of me is angry instead of just worried." "You're not horrible," Kai said softly. "You're hurt and confused and being emotionally manipulated by experts. Your feelings are completely valid. What if she dies? What if the last conversation I have with my mother is her telling me to choose between you and them? Then that's her choice, not yours. You offered love and got ultimatums in return. You're not responsible for their reactions to your happiness." Cassie's phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Your mother is asking for you. St. David's Medical Center, room 314. I hope you're happy with what you've done." Even in crisis, Greg couldn't resist a guilt trip. Cassie showed the message to Kai, who shook his head in disgust. "Do you want to go see her?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to run to the hospital and apologize for everything, beg their forgiveness, promise to break up with you just to make them happy again. And the other part? The other part knows that's exactly what they want. that this might not even be a real medical emergency. Mom's pulled stress-related episodes before when she wanted to control a situation. It was true. Throughout Cassie's childhood, Vivian had mysteriously developed health problems whenever someone in the family wasn't doing what she wanted. Headaches that required complete silence when Cassie wanted to have friends over. Back spasms that needed total rest when Greg suggested a vacation she didn't approve of. Heart palpitations when Ethan announced he was switching majors in college. But what if it's real this time? Cassie asked. What if I don't go and something happens to her? Kai took her hands in his, looking directly into her eyes. Cassie, if you want to go see your mother, I'll drive you there right now. But don't go because you feel guilty or responsible. Go because you love her and want to make sure she's okay. And if you do go, don't let them use this crisis to manipulate you into changing your mind about us. Cassie thought about it for a long moment. She did love her mother, despite everything. She wanted Vivian to be healthy and safe, but she also recognized this situation for what it was, another weapon in their campaign to control her choices. I'll go, she decided, but I'm not going alone, and I'm not going to apologize for being engaged to the man I love. I'll come with you, Kai offered. No. If you're there, they'll just focus on attacking you instead of dealing with the real issues. But I need you to know, whatever happens at that hospital, whatever they say or do, it doesn't change anything between us. I'm still going to marry you. Kai smiled for the first time all day. I know you are, because we're stronger than their fear and hatred. As they drove to the hospital, Cassie steeled herself for what was sure to be another emotional battlefield. Her parents had escalated to using health scares as manipulation tactics, which meant they were getting desperate. But it also meant they were running out of ammunition. She was going to see her mother, check on her condition, and make it clear that love couldn't be negotiated away through guilt trips and ultimatums. Whether Vivian was genuinely sick or performing for sympathy, Cassie was done being controlled by other people's emotional crises. The hardest part wasn't walking into that hospital room. It was walking in as the person she really was, not the daughter her parents wanted her to be. But that was exactly what she was going to do. St. David's Medical Center felt cold and sterile as Cassie walked through the corridors toward room 314, her heels clicking against the polished floors. She'd been in this hospital before, when Ethan had his appendix out, when her grandfather had his final heart attack. But tonight felt different. Tonight, she wasn't coming as the dutiful daughter ready to fix everyone's problems. She was coming as an engaged woman who refused to be manipulated. The door to room 314 was slightly ajar, and Cassie could hear voices inside. Her father's deep rumble, Ethan's higher pitch, and occasionally her mother's weaker responses. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and knocked gently before entering. "Hi, Mom," she said softly, stepping into the room. Vivian was propped up in the hospital bed, looking pale and dramatic against the white sheets. She was wearing a hospital gown and had an IV in her arm, but her hair was perfectly arranged, and she was wearing lipstick. Either she'd had advance warning about this emergency, or she'd managed to do her makeup in the ambulance. "Cassie," Vivian said weakly, reaching out with one hand. "You came." "Of course I came. You're my mother." Cassie approached the bed but didn't take the offered hand. She could feel her father's hostile glare from his position by the window. "The doctor says her blood pressure spiked dangerously high, stress-induced. They're keeping her overnight for observation." "I'm glad she's getting the care she needs," Cassie replied evenly. Ethan was sitting in the visitor's chair, looking uncomfortable and younger than his 23 years. "Cass, maybe we could talk outside for a minute? Whatever you want to say, you can say in front of everyone." She wasn't going to be divided and conquered anymore. "The doctor asked about recent stressors in the family," Vivian said, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound like a martyred saint. "I told him about your engagement situation. He said family conflicts can be particularly damaging to cardiovascular health." "Mom, my engagement isn't a situation. It's a celebration. Or it would be if my family could be happy for me instead of treating my happiness like a personal attack." Your happiness? Greg stepped forward, his face reddening. You think destroying this family is happiness? You think putting your mother in the hospital is happiness? I didn't put Mom in the hospital. Her reaction to my engagement put her in the hospital. There's a difference. How can you be so cold? Ethan asked, looking genuinely shocked. Look at her, Cass. Look what this is doing to our family. Cassie did look at her mother, really look at her. Vivian was watching the exchange with sharp, calculating eyes that didn't match her weak voice or trembling hands. She was performing, just like she had when Cassie was 8 and wanted to go to summer camp, or when she was 16 and wanted to go to prom with a boy Vivian didn't approve of. Mom, Cassie said, pulling up a chair beside the bed, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I love you. I've always loved you, but I'm not going to end my engagement to make you feel better about your own prejudices. Prejudices? Vivian's voice suddenly had more strength. This isn't about prejudice. This is about what's best for you, what's best for our family, what's best for any children you might have. And what exactly do you think would be wrong with my mixed-race children? The room fell silent. Cassie had asked the question they'd all been dancing around, the one that cut to the heart of their objections. That's not what I meant, Vivian said weakly, but the damage was done. Yes, it is, Cassie said quietly. You're worried about what my mixed-race children would look like, how they'd fit into your perfect white suburban world. You're worried about what your friends at the country club would say, how it would affect Dad's business relationships. Stop putting words in my mouth, Dad snapped. Then explain it to me, Dad. Explain exactly what's wrong with Kai that makes him unacceptable as a husband. He's educated, successful, kind, faithful, hardworking. He treats me better than any man I've ever dated, so what's the problem? Another silence. Cassie could see Ethan looking back and forth between their parents, waiting for an answer that never came. He's not one of us, Vivian finally said. There it is, Cassie said, standing up. He's not one of us. Not white enough, not Italian enough, not the right kind of American for your taste. That's not fair, Ethan protested. Mom and Dad aren't racist. Then what are they? Cassie turned to her brother. What do you call it when someone rejects a good man solely based on his ethnicity? What do you call it when parents threaten to disown their daughter for loving someone of a different race? We call it protecting our family's future, Greg said coldly. And I call it racism, plain and simple. Vivian started crying then, real tears this time, and Cassie felt the familiar tug of guilt, but she pushed it down. These tears weren't about genuine emotion, they were about losing control of the narrative.
Cassie, please, Vivian sobbed. Don't do this to us. Don't make us choose between accepting him and losing you. I'm not making you choose anything, Mom. You made that choice when you gave me an ultimatum. You chose your prejudice over your daughter's happiness. I chose what I thought was best. For who? Cassie interrupted. Best for who exactly? Not for me, not for Kai, not for any grandchildren you might have had if you could have learned to love them regardless of their appearance. So who is this really best for? For our family's reputation, Greg said bluntly. For our standing in the community. For the business relationships we've spent decades building. So you're willing to sacrifice your daughter's happiness for business connections and social status? We're willing to save you from a mistake that will affect the rest of your life, Vivian said, her tears stopping as quickly as they'd started. Cassie looked around the room at these 3 people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. Her father, standing rigid with disapproval. Her mother, using illness to manipulate emotions. Her brother, confused, but ultimately siding with the parents rather than supporting her happiness. You know what? She said quietly. This will affect the rest of my life, but not in the way you think. She walked to the foot of the bed where she could see all 3 of them clearly. This situation has taught me who you really are. Dad, you're a man who values business relationships more than his daughter's well-being. Mom, you're someone who uses emotional manipulation and fake health crises to control people. And Ethan, You're someone who chooses the easy path of pleasing everyone instead of standing up for what's right. Cassie, Ethan started, I'm not finished. This situation has also taught me who I am. I'm someone who chooses love over fear. I'm someone who won't sacrifice my happiness to make other people comfortable with their own bigotry. I'm someone who's strong enough to build a life without people who see my love as a betrayal. She pulled her purse strap higher on her shoulder, preparing to leave. I hope you feel better, Mom. I genuinely do. But I'm done being responsible for your emotional reactions to my life choices. I'm done letting your approval determine my self-worth. I'm done pretending that your love comes without strings attached. If you walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back, Greg said menacingly. Cassie paused at the threshold and looked back at him. If I stay, don't expect me to be the same person who's been desperately seeking your approval for 25 years. That person is gone. She died the moment you made me choose between you and the man I love. She walked out of the room and didn't look back, even when she heard Vivian calling her name. In the elevator, she finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. She'd officially chosen her future over her past, her happiness over their control. Her phone was already ringing as she reached the parking garage. Kai's name on the screen. How did it go? He asked gently. I think I just lost my family, she said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. No, Kai said firmly. You just found yourself. And as Cassie drove away from the hospital, she realized he was absolutely right.
The morning after the hospital confrontation, Cassie woke up in Kai's apartment feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from various family members and a text thread from her cousin Jenny that was already 40 messages long. She deleted everything without reading it and turned her phone to silent. Good morning, beautiful, Kai said, appearing with coffee and toast. How are you feeling? Free, she said, surprising herself with the honesty of it. Terrified, but free. That's normal. You just broke free from 25 years of conditioning. It's going to feel weird for a while. Cassie sat up in bed, accepting the coffee gratefully. Kai, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. Are you sure you want to marry into this chaos? Because it's not going to get better. My family is never going to accept you, they're never going to apologize, and they're probably going to make our lives difficult for years to come. Kai set down his coffee and took her hands in his. Cassie, I'm not marrying your family. I'm marrying you. And the woman I fell in love with is strong, independent, compassionate, and brave enough to stand up for what she believes in. What I saw last night, you standing up to them, refusing to be manipulated, that's exactly who I want to spend my life with. Even if it means dealing with their drama forever. Even if it means dealing with their drama forever. But honestly, I don't think it will be forever. People like your parents only have power if you give it to them. You stopped giving them power last night. Later that morning, Brooke arrived with reinforcements, her sister Riley, who was a family lawyer, and their mutual friend, Dr. Amanda Pierce, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Emergency intervention, Brooke announced, setting bags of takeout on Kai's kitchen table. We're going to help you figure out your next steps. Riley spread out legal documents while Amanda pulled out a notepad. First things first, Riley said, let's talk about your financial situation. What exactly do your parents control? Cassie laid out the reality. The car was in their name, they were co-signers on her credit cards, they'd given her money for her apartment deposit, and they had connections that could affect her employment throughout Austin's event planning industry. Okay, Riley said, making notes. None of this is insurmountable. The car thing is annoying, but solvable. You can get your own credit cards. The job situation is trickier, but Austin's a big city with lots of opportunities. Amanda leaned forward. What I'm more concerned about is the emotional toll. Cassie, you've just cut ties with your entire family of origin. That's traumatic, even when it's the right decision. How are you processing this? I keep waiting to feel guilty, like I should be devastated about losing my parents. But mostly I just feel relieved. Does that make me a terrible person?
It makes you someone who's been living under tremendous psychological pressure for your entire life. Relief is a completely normal response to escaping that kind of control. But what if they're right? What if I am being selfish? What if I am destroying the family? Let me ask you something, Amanda said. If Kai were white, would your parents have given you this ultimatum? No, absolutely not. Then you're not destroying anything. You're refusing to enable their racism. There's a huge difference. Riley slid a business card across the table. This is a financial advisor who specializes in helping people establish independence from controlling families. And this, she handed over another card, is a therapist who can help you work through the family trauma without falling back into old patterns. You think I need therapy? I think anyone who's been through what you've been through could benefit from professional support. There's no shame in getting help to process this transition. Over the next few hours, they developed a concrete plan. Cassie would use her savings to lease a used car. She'd apply for her own credit cards using her employment history. She'd start networking outside her parents' sphere of influence, maybe even consider starting her own event planning business. The beauty of your situation, Brooke pointed out, is that you're actually really good at your job. You have skills, experience, and a portfolio of successful events. Your parents' connections helped you get started, but your talent is what's kept you successful. You could totally go independent, Riley agreed, especially if you focus on couples who value authenticity over social status. There are plenty of people planning weddings who would appreciate a coordinator who understands what real love looks like.
The idea sparked something in Cassie's mind. Her own wedding could be her first independent project, a showcase of her abilities without her parents' influence or connections. Instead of the elaborate country club affair they would have demanded, she could plan something that actually reflected her and Kai's values. "What are you thinking about?" Kai asked, noticing her expression. "Our wedding," she said slowly. "What if we made it exactly what we want instead of what anyone else expects?" "I love the sound of that. What do you want?" Cassie closed her eyes and let herself imagine freely for the first time. Something intimate, maybe outdoors, focused on celebrating love rather than impressing people. Your parents, our real friends, people who actually support us. No country club? Definitely no country club. Maybe that botanical garden we visited last month, or even someone's backyard. Somewhere beautiful but not pretentious. Amanda smiled. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're making decisions based on your own values instead of trying to anticipate other people's reactions." "It feels strange," Cassie admitted. "I've spent so long trying to figure out what other people wanted that I'm not sure I even know what I want." "That's the journey," Amanda said, "figuring out who you are when you're not performing for an audience." Riley pulled out her phone. "I'm sending you the contact information for a wedding photographer who specializes in intimate ceremonies and a florist who does amazing work with native Texas plants. These are people who care more about capturing authentic love than staging perfect magazine shots." "You guys are amazing," Cassie said, feeling overwhelmed by their support. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just be happy," Brooke said simply. "Plan a beautiful wedding, build a great marriage, and show the world what real love looks like. That's thanks enough." As evening approached and her friends prepared to leave, Cassie felt something she hadn't experienced in years: excitement about the future. For the first time in her adult life, she was making decisions based purely on what she wanted, not what would minimize conflict or earn approval. "One more thing," Riley said as she packed up her legal documents. "Your parents are going to try to escalate this. When they realize they've lost control completely, they might get desperate. Don't be surprised if they try to sabotage your wedding directly." "What do you mean?" "Calling vendors to cancel services, spreading rumors, showing up uninvited to cause drama. People who are used to controlling others don't give up power easily." "Should I be worried?" "You should be prepared," Amanda said, "but you should also remember that you're not alone anymore. You have people who actually love and support you. That's more powerful than their attempts at control."
That night, as Cassie and Kai sat on his couch planning their wedding, she felt a peace she'd never experienced before. No second-guessing every decision, no worrying about whether her choices would offend someone, no performing or pretending or trying to be perfect. Just two people in love planning a celebration of that love with the people who mattered most. You know what the best part is? She told Kai as they scrolled through venue options on her laptop. What's that? This is going to be the most honest wedding either of us has ever attended. No politics, no drama, no hidden agendas, just love. I can't wait, Kai said, kissing her temple. I can't wait to marry you in front of people who are genuinely happy for us. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Cassie could envision a future that wasn't overshadowed by her family's disapproval. A future where her worth wasn't determined by other people's opinions, where her happiness wasn't contingent on making others comfortable. It was going to be beautiful.
3 weeks after the hospital confrontation, Cassie was sitting in the Austin Botanical Garden with a wedding planner's notebook, feeling more excited about her future than she had in years. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees, and she could already picture string lights woven between the branches, creating a magical canopy for their evening ceremony. "This spot is perfect," said Maria Santos, the photographer Riley had recommended. She was a petite woman with kind eyes and an infectious enthusiasm for capturing authentic moments. "The light here during golden hour will be absolutely stunning." Kai squeezed Cassie's hand as they walked through the garden's various spaces. They'd chosen the Hartman Prehistoric Garden for their ceremony, an intimate space surrounded by ancient-looking plants that felt both primordial and romantic. "It seats about 50 people comfortably," Maria noted, taking test shots from different angles. "Are you planning on more than that?" "Probably closer to 30, Cassie said. "We want everyone there to be someone who genuinely supports our relationship." It was amazing how freeing that criteria was. No obligation invites to distant relatives who barely knew them, no business associates her father wanted to impress, no family friends who would spend the entire ceremony judging their choices. Just people who loved them and wanted to celebrate their happiness. Kai's parents were flying in from California, along with his sister and her family. Brooke was going to be the maid of honor, with Natasha and a few other close friends as bridesmaids. Kai's best friend from veterinary school would officiate. He'd gotten ordained online specifically for their wedding, which felt infinitely more meaningful than having some stranger perform the ceremony. "What about your brother?" Kai asked gently as they reviewed the guest list later that afternoon. "Any chance he might come around?" Cassie had been wondering the same thing. Ethan had texted her a few times since the hospital confrontation, but their conversations had been stilted and uncomfortable. He was clearly caught between loyalty to his parents and genuine affection for his sister. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me hopes he'll realize how wrong they are and support us, but part of me thinks he's too afraid of being cut off himself to take that risk. Want to try reaching out to him?" Cassie considered it. Ethan was only 23, still financially dependent on his parents for his final year of college. She couldn't really blame him for not wanting to jeopardize his education by defying them. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm not going to beg anyone to attend my wedding. If he wants to be there, he knows how to reach me." The wedding planning process had become a revelation in self-discovery. Without her mother's constant opinions about what was appropriate or traditional, Cassie found herself making choices that actually reflected her personality. Instead of the elaborate white ball gown her mother had always envisioned, she chose a flowing, cream-colored dress with delicate lace sleeves that she found at a vintage boutique. Instead of formal place settings and expensive centerpieces, they planned simple wooden tables with wildflower arrangements. "This is so much more you than anything your parents would have wanted," Brooke observed as they addressed invitations at Kai's kitchen table. "Remember when your mom made you register for that formal china pattern? You hated it." "I had forgotten about that," Cassie laughed. "She kept insisting I'd want proper dinner parties someday. I told her I preferred casual entertaining, and she said I'd change my mind when I matured." "As if preferring comfort over pretension is a sign of immaturity," Natasha snorted. "Your mom has some serious issues with control." Cassie's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her stomach immediately tensed. Her parents had been using different numbers to try to get around her blocking them. But this message was different. Cassie, this is Dr. Martinez from the Botanical Garden. We had someone call asking about your event, claiming there might be permit issues. Just wanted to let you know everything is perfectly legal and confirmed. Some people just don't want others to be happy. Your wedding is going to be beautiful. They're trying to sabotage the venue, Cassie said, showing the message to Kai and her friends. Just like Riley predicted, Brooke said grimly. What else might they go after? Cassie thought about all the vendors they'd booked. The photographer, the caterer, the florist, the musician they'd hired for the ceremony. Her parents were connected enough in Austin's business community to potentially cause problems with any of them. I need to call everyone and give them a heads up, she realized. Let them know my family might try to interfere. Spending the next hour making those calls was both embarrassing and enlightening. Most of the vendors were understanding and supportive, promising to verify any changes directly with Cassie before acting on them. But a few seemed uncomfortable, clearly worried about getting caught in family drama.
"This is exhausting," Cassie said, after hanging up with the last vendor. "They're really going to try to ruin our wedding day?" "They're going to try," Kai corrected, "but they're not going to succeed. We have good people on our team, and we're prepared for their tactics." Maria called back within the hour. "Cassie, I just wanted to let you know, someone called my studio claiming to be you and tried to cancel your photography package. They didn't have the security phrase we established, so I didn't process it. But you might want to warn your other vendors about that specific tactic." "Did they say why they were canceling?" "Something about the engagement being called off due to family pressure. Obviously, I knew that was false, since we just met this morning and you two are clearly very much in love." After Maria hung up, Cassie felt a cold fury building in her chest. Her parents weren't content to simply withdraw their support. They were actively trying to sabotage her happiness. "That's it," she said, grabbing her keys. "I'm done being reactive. It's time to go on the offensive." "What are you thinking?" Kai asked. "I'm thinking it's time for a preemptive strike. If they want to play games, we're going to set some ground rules." 20 minutes later, Cassie was standing in the lobby of Romano Construction, her father's business headquarters. She dressed professionally, a sharp black suit that made her look every inch the successful businesswoman she was, and carried herself with the confidence she'd learned from years of dealing with difficult clients. "I need to speak with Greg Romano," she told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm his daughter. He'll see me." Greg appeared in the lobby within minutes, looking surprised and wary. "Cassie, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk. Privately." He led her back to his office, closing the door behind them. The space was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive furniture, awards covering the walls, photos of construction projects, and a massive desk designed to intimidate visitors. "If you're here to apologize," Greg began. "I'm here to set boundaries," Cassie interrupted, remaining standing while he sat behind his desk. "You and Mom are going to stop interfering with my wedding." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? So you didn't call the Botanical Garden claiming there were permit issues. Mom didn't call my photographer pretending to be me and trying to cancel services." Greg's expression didn't change, but she could see the acknowledgement in his eyes. "Dad, I'm going to say this once very clearly. If you continue to sabotage my wedding, I will take legal action against you for harassment and interference with business contracts. I will also make sure everyone in Austin's business community knows exactly why you're doing it." "You're threatening me?" "I'm promising you. Try to ruin my wedding, and I will ruin your reputation. Simple as that." Greg stood up slowly, his face reddening. "You have no idea what you're playing with, little girl." "I'm not a little girl anymore, Dad. I'm an adult woman who's tired of being controlled and manipulated. Leave my wedding alone or face the consequences." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Dad, when you tell Mom about this conversation, make sure she understands that I mean every word. I'm done being afraid of you both." Walking out of that office, Cassie felt a power she'd never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she'd stood up to her father from a position of strength rather than desperation. She wasn't begging for approval or trying to keep the peace. She was setting terms and enforcing boundaries. Her phone rang as she reached her car. Kai's name on the screen. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think I just declared war," she said, surprised by how calm she sounded. "Good. It's about time someone stood up to them." As Cassie drove away from her father's business, she realized something important. She wasn't afraid of them anymore. They could threaten, manipulate, and sabotage all they wanted, but they couldn't control her unless she let them. And she was never going to let them again.
6 weeks later, Cassie woke up on her wedding day to the sound of rain pattering against the windows of the bed and breakfast where she'd spent the night with her bridesmaids. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. They'd planned an outdoor ceremony, but then she heard Brooke's voice from the next room. "The weather app says it'll clear by noon," Brooke was saying. "And even if it doesn't, we've got the covered pavilion as backup. It's going to be perfect either way." Cassie smiled, stretching luxuriously in the comfortable bed. A year ago, rain on her wedding day would have sent her into a complete meltdown, worried about disappointing her mother and ruining the perfect day her parents expected. Now, she felt only excitement. Rain or shine, she was marrying the love of her life today, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about their happiness. "Good morning, beautiful bride," Natasha said, appearing in the doorway with coffee and pastries. "How are you feeling?" "Happy," Cassie said, surprising herself with the simplicity of it. Just purely happy. The morning passed in a blur of preparation. Hair and makeup in the cozy sitting room, while Dr. Yuki Nakamura, Kai's mother, told embarrassing stories about his childhood that had all the bridesmaids laughing. Dr. James Nakamura had taken Kai and the groomsmen for breakfast, promising to keep him calm and fed before the ceremony. "You know," Dr. Yuki said as the makeup artist added the finishing touches to Cassie's look, "when Kai first told us about you, he said you were the kindest person he'd ever met. But watching you handle your family situation with such grace and strength, I think you're also one of the bravest." Cassie felt tears threatening to ruin her makeup. "Thank you. Your family has been such a gift through all of this." "Our family," Dr. Yuki corrected gently. "You're our daughter now, regardless of what happens today. That's not conditional on ceremonies or paperwork. That's just love." The contrast with her own parents couldn't have been starker. Kai's family had welcomed her completely from day one, never questioning her worthiness or imposing conditions on their acceptance. They'd offered to help pay for the wedding, not as a way to control the planning, but simply because they wanted to contribute to their children's happiness. By 11 a.m., the rain had stopped and weak sunlight was filtering through the clouds. Cassie put on her vintage lace dress, the one her mother would have hated for being too casual, and felt absolutely perfect. The dress was her in a way that the elaborate ball gown her mother had picked out never could have been. "Someone's here to see you," Brooke said, knocking on the door. "Ethan's downstairs." Cassie's heart jumped. Her brother had been radio silent for weeks, and she'd assumed he'd chosen their parents' side definitively. She made her way downstairs, still in her robe over her dress, to find Ethan standing awkwardly in the bed and breakfast's parlor. He looked older, somehow, more serious than the carefree college student she remembered. He was holding a small wrapped box and wearing a suit she didn't recognize. "Hi, Cass," he said quietly. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either, until this morning." He held out the box. "This is for you, from Grandma Romano's jewelry collection. Dad doesn't know I took it." Cassie opened the box to find their grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones she'd always admired as a child. "Ethan, you could get in huge trouble for this." "Yeah, well, I'm already in trouble. I told them last night that I was coming to your wedding." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he remembered from their childhood. "They said if I walked through those doors today, I shouldn't bother coming home." "And you came anyway?" "I came anyway." He looked at me seriously. "Cass, I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realized something. You're my sister. You've always been there for me, always supported my dreams, always had my back. When I got arrested for that stupid party in high school, you drove 3 hours to bail me out and never told Mom and Dad. When I wanted to change majors and they freaked out, you talked them down." I remembered both incidents clearly.
She'd always been the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who tried to protect Ethan from their parents' more controlling impulses. The point is, Ethan continued, you've always chosen family over everything else. And now I'm watching our parents abandon you for choosing love, and it's just wrong. It's so completely wrong. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to be part of a family that thinks love is conditional on race or approval or anything else. I don't want to be someone who abandons his sister on the most important day of her life because he's afraid of disappointing bigots. Cassie felt tears spilling over, not caring about her makeup anymore. Ethan, are you sure? This is going to change everything with Mom and Dad. Good. Maybe it's time for things to change. He hugged me tightly. I love you, sis. And I think Kai is great. I should have said that weeks ago.
You're saying it now. That's what matters. As they pulled apart, Brooke appeared with tissues and touch-up makeup. Sorry to interrupt, but we need to get moving. The photographer wants to do some pre-ceremony shots, and we need to get to the garden. The Austin Botanical Garden looked magical in the early afternoon light. The morning's rain had left everything fresh and green, and Maria had been right about the golden hour lighting. As Cassie walked through the space where she'd be married in 2 hours, she felt a deep sense of rightness about everything. The flowers are perfect, she told the florist, admiring the simple arrangements of wildflowers and native Texas plants. Everything looked natural, unfussy, authentic, exactly what she'd envisioned. Your groom is already here, Maria said, grinning. He's been pacing around the groom's area for 30 minutes, checking his watch every 5 seconds. He's nervous? He's excited. There's a difference. That man can't wait to marry you. As the hour approached, Cassie found herself remarkably calm. There was no family drama to manage, no impossible expectations to meet, no performance to give. Just a woman about to marry the man she loved in front of people who supported their happiness. Brooke appeared with her bouquet, simple white roses mixed with baby's breath and eucalyptus. You ready for this? I've been ready for this my whole life. I just didn't know it until I met him. The music started, acoustic guitar playing At Last by Etta James, performed by their friend Marcus, who'd driven down from Dallas specifically for their wedding. As Cassie walked down the aisle on Ethan's arm, she saw Kai waiting for her, under the arbor they'd decorated with string lights and flowing fabric. But what struck her most weren't the decorations or the setting, it was the faces looking back at her. Every single person in those 30 seats was beaming with genuine joy. Kai's parents were crying happy tears. Brooke was grinning and giving her a thumbs up. Dr. Amanda Pierce, who'd become not just a therapist, but a friend, was nodding encouragingly. These were her people, her chosen family, the ones who'd stood by her when everything fell apart and helped her build something beautiful from the wreckage. When she reached Kai, he took her hands and whispered, "You look absolutely perfect." "So do you," she whispered back, and meant it completely. Their friend David began the ceremony with words that brought tears to many eyes. "We're here today not just to witness a wedding, but to celebrate the courage it takes to choose love over fear, authenticity over expectation, and hope over history." As they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Cassie felt the final pieces of her old life falling away. She was no longer the daughter desperately seeking approval from parents who would never give it unconditionally. She was a woman choosing her own path, surrounded by love that required no performance, no perfection, no compromises of her essential self. When David pronounced them husband and wife, and Kai kissed her under the arbor as their chosen family cheered, Cassie knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Some families are born, others are built, and the one she'd built was going to last forever.
1 year later, Cassie stood in the kitchen of the small house she and Kai had bought together, preparing dinner for their first Thanksgiving as a married couple. The kitchen was modest compared to her parents' elaborate setup, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and the aroma of her mother-in-law's famous stuffing recipe. Need any help? Kai asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she stirred the gravy. Just keep doing that, she said, leaning back against his chest. Perfect husband duty right there. Through the window, she could see Ethan in the backyard with Kai's nephew, teaching him how to throw a football. Her brother had transferred to UT Austin for his final semester, officially cutting ties with their parents' financial support, but gaining something far more valuable, his integrity and his relationship with his sister. The Nakamuras just pulled up, Brooke called from the living room, where she was setting up a card table for the overflow seating. Their small dining room couldn't accommodate everyone they'd invited, but somehow that made it feel more intimate, more genuine than the formal holiday gatherings of Cassie's childhood. Dr. Yuki and Dr. James Nakamura came through the front door carrying covered dishes and wearing matching aprons that read, "World's Best In-Laws." They'd driven from California the day before and had spent the morning helping with meal preparation while sharing stories about Kai's childhood that still made Cassie laugh. "How's my favorite daughter-in-law?" Dr. James asked, kissing Cassie's cheek. "I'm your only daughter-in-law," she laughed. "That's what makes you the favorite," he winked. Riley arrived with her partner and homemade pie, followed by Dr. Amanda Pierce and her husband. Natasha brought her new boyfriend, a graphic designer who was already talking to Cassie about collaborating on marketing materials for her event planning business. That business had been the biggest surprise of the year. 3 months after the wedding, Cassie had finally worked up the courage to leave her job and strike out on her own. Her first client had been a couple who'd heard about her wedding through Maria, the photographer, and wanted something equally authentic and intimate. Word had spread through Austin's creative community, and now Cassie Romano Nakamura Events was booked solid through the following summer. "I'm so proud of what you've built," Dr. Yuki said, helping Cassie carry dishes to the table. "Not just the business, but this whole life, this family you've created." Looking around the crowded room, Cassie felt overwhelmed with gratitude. These people had rallied around her and Kai during their darkest moments, offering practical help, emotional support, and unconditional love. They'd proven that family wasn't about shared DNA. It was about showing up, supporting each other's dreams, and choosing love over judgment. "Should we say grace?" Dr. James asked, once everyone was seated around the combined dining table and card table setup. "Actually," Cassie said, standing up, "I'd like to say something first." The room quieted, and she looked around at these beautiful faces, her chosen family, her real family, the people who'd helped her discover who she really was. "A year and a half ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought it meant accepting whatever treatment you received because blood was thicker than water. I thought it meant performing for approval and sacrificing your authentic self to keep the peace." Ethan reached over and squeezed her hand, his eyes already misty. "But you all taught me something different. You taught me that real family fights for your happiness, not against it. Real family celebrates your growth instead of trying to control it. Real family loves you for who you are, not who they want you to be." Kai's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and she could see Dr. Yuki dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. "So today, I'm grateful for all of you, for showing me what love without conditions looks like, for standing by us when things got ugly, for helping us build something beautiful from the ashes of what I thought I needed to be happy." She raised her water glass. "To chosen family, to unconditional love, and to the courage to choose authenticity over approval." "Cheers!" everyone said, raising their glasses. As they dug into the meal, conversation flowed easily around the table. Dr. James was telling Ethan about graduate programs in environmental science. Brooke was showing Dr. Yuki photos from a recent client's wedding. Riley's partner was discussing the latest city council elections with Dr. Amanda's husband. It struck her that this was what family dinners were supposed to feel like: relaxed, inclusive, celebrating everyone's individuality instead of demanding conformity. Her phone, which she had left on silent in the kitchen, buzzed with a notification. When she went to refill the water pitcher, she glanced at it out of habit. A text from an unknown donor. "Saw the article about your business in Austin Monthly.
Congratulations. You look happy. Dash Mom.
Cassie stared at the message for a long moment. It was the first communication she'd received from either parent since the hospital confrontation. The article had come out 2 weeks ago, featuring Cassie as one of Austin's rising women entrepreneurs. The photographer had captured her in her element, setting up for a client's outdoor ceremony, looking confident and genuinely joyful. She showed the message to Kai when he came into the kitchen looking for more wine. "How do you feel about that?" he asked gently. "Honestly, nothing," Cassie said, and realized it was true. A year ago, any contact from her would have sent me into an emotional tailspin. Now it's just words from someone I used to know. "Do you want to respond?" Cassie thought about it, then deleted the message. "No, I'm done performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. If she wants a relationship with me, she knows what needs to change." They returned to the dining room where Ethan was regaling the table with the story of Cassie's first attempt at Thanksgiving dinner when she was 12. A disaster involving a turkey that caught fire and a smoke alarm that wouldn't stop beeping. "She was so determined to prove she could cook like Mom," Ethan laughed, "but she forgot to remove the plastic wrapper from the turkey." "In my defense," Cassie protested, "no one told me about the wrapper." "The fire department had to come," Ethan continued, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes, and Cassie was standing in the driveway crying, not because of the fire, but because she was worried about disappointing Mom. The laughter around the table faded slightly as everyone absorbed the weight of that detail, a 12-year-old more concerned about parental approval than her own safety. "Well," Dr. Yuki said gently, "I'd say you've learned to cook quite well without anyone's approval. This meal is absolutely delicious." "Bless," Kai added, squeezing Cassie's shoulder. "No fire department required." As the evening wound down and their guests prepared to leave, Cassie felt a deep contentment settling over her. This was what she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it, a sense of belonging that didn't require her to be anyone other than herself. Later, as she and Kai cleaned up the kitchen together, she reflected on how much had changed in just 18 months. She'd lost the family she was born into, but gained something infinitely more valuable, the knowledge that she was worthy of unconditional love, the courage to set boundaries with toxic people, and the wisdom to choose her own path regardless of others' expectations. "What are you thinking about?" Kai asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Just gratitude. For all of it, even the hard parts, because they led me here." "Any regrets?" Cassie considered the question seriously. Did she regret the pain of losing her parents, the stress of the ultimatum, the difficulty of starting over financially and professionally? "No," she said finally. "I regret that they made the choices they did. I regret that they let their prejudice destroy our relationship. But I don't regret standing up for us, for choosing love over fear." Kai pulled her into his arms and they swayed slightly in their small kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a perfect day. "I love you, Mrs. Romano Nakamura," he whispered. "I love you too, Mr. Romano Nakamura," she replied, still getting a thrill from their hyphenated name, a symbol of partnership rather than ownership, equality rather than submission. As they turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Cassie caught a glimpse of their wedding photo on the mantel, surrounded by pictures of their chosen family, their travels together, and the life they had built brick by brick with people who truly loved them. She'd been asked to choose between her family and her happiness. And she had chosen happiness. It had turned out to be the best decision of her life. Some stories end with reconciliation, with families coming together despite their differences. But sometimes the healthiest ending is the one where you stop waiting for people to change and start building something beautiful with those who already see your worth. Cassie had found her happily ever after, not by fixing broken relationships, but by having the courage to walk away from them. And she'd never been happier. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.